Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone, hopefully who's watching the replay. Anyone who might jump in today at any point, welcome to day 2. Really excited again for us to be doing this today. The plan is to kind of continue integrating some of the ideas from yesterday. If you haven't seen yesterday's yet and you're just jumping in, that's absolutely fine. I'm going to briefly recap a couple of things. And then we're also going to be talking about some of my favorite tools, processes, systems, and things like that. So, no worries. Okay, perfect. Okay, cool. So let me share the presentation and we can get going. Okay. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, perfect. So hopefully you can all see that there. So day 2, I've kind of jokingly, tongue-in-cheek called this Let the Robots Handle It, because we're talking about automations and things, but we're also going to, in general, just be talking about systems to support you. And that's the whole goal here, is like, how can we make this stuff feel supportive and not overwhelming and stressful? Because I know a lot of people find the tech pieces, the system pieces, the manager role pieces more out of their comfort zone, and it's kind of the stuff that gets left. So that's what we're tackling today. Just to introduce myself again, because like I said, there's a lot of new faces coming into this group and into these events. I'm Kat. I'm a business coach and freedom mentor. I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm a digital nomad. I have 3 businesses right now. I coaches, consultants, service providers, and just help them run things more efficiently, more effectively, make more impact, make more income, and just generally also get like a perfect or much better work-life balance. Like, I'm really obsessed with this, getting busy humans to have more time, more location, and financial freedom, because, you know, at one point in my business, I was committed to work something like nearly 80 hours a week. Back before that, in my corporate job, I just lived and breathed work. So I know what it's like to be a doer, right? To be a worker, to throw yourself into things. And it's taken quite a bit of time to unwind those patterns and change those patterns, but I have done it. I have much better capacity here now. I'm way more aware of what I like to do, and I just have so much better balance, and I just love helping people find that as well. So that's what I do. So today, if you're joining the replay, feel free to add any questions, post any comments, any thoughts and ideas. And, you know, if you see anyone commenting, feel free to cheer them on, witness each other, and just share around these things. Because I really want this to be a supportive space. And as yesterday, like, if this is stuff you already know, remember, integration is actually one of the most important pieces. Like, a lot of us take in a lot of data, take in a lot of information, but then never integrate it. And that's one of the big issues. And it's one of the best reasons to hire coaches, to be in group spaces, because the integration part is the bit that matters. So just remember, there's always something to learn, and decide that that's what you're going to be doing today. You're going to be learning, you're going to be integrating, you're going to get exactly what you need. Great. And if you're not in the Facebook group yet, please get over there. There's some brilliant comments and things happening in there as well. So today, I'm going to just keep an eye on any comments as well. So I just want to get that up. Okay, cool. So today, we're going to be talking about really the core activities that you should be doing in your business, the things you should be engaging in frequently. And once you are clear on those core activities, you should be building systems and processes around them. just to support you and make life easier. So I'm going to share some of my favorite tools and automations, but I just wanted to talk about this idea a bit as well. So firstly, I want to recap a little bit of what we did yesterday. We were mainly talking about the 3 roles. So this is the doer, who is the worker, the get things done, the here and now, like this is my to-do list, I'm working through it, reactionary role. We have the manager. This is the person who focuses on the systems and processes and getting the best and most efficient work out of the people and the systems and the things that are happening within the business. And the final one is the visionary. So this is that CEO energy. This is that entrepreneurial mindset. This is a person who thinks big picture and really has a vision of what the business can and should be, and then is headed towards that as well. So that's the 3 main roles that we covered yesterday. And we go into it in a lot more detail yesterday, but I just wanted to recap because I think it's important with what we're talking about today. So what we're talking about today is really being in the manager role. Now, from some of the comments we had yesterday, that manager role is often the one that people are missing, right? They've already got a business, they've got into entrepreneurship. So some part of them is attached to the visionary. They may not be being in their visionary often enough, but they have visions, they have that creativity, they have those ideas. And indeed, anytime you birth a course, you birth a group program, you birth an offer, you create content, that's coming often from your visionary. So a lot of people they do spend some time in the visionary. Whether they spend enough time is another question. And that's what part of the exercises that I'm sharing is going to help with. But that's the visionary. And then the other place that most people spend a lot of time in is the doer. So, which makes sense because the doer is the person who's actually doing the work. So when you are getting started in your business, getting a practice up and running, getting an agency up and running, whatever your business looks like, you are wearing a lot of hats and you're being reactive and you're doing a lot of work and you're doing a lot of things. Like it's likely that you're doing all the work. You might be doing all the admin. You might be doing all the selling. Like everything is generally coming from you. And so a lot of people spend a lot of time in this doer role as well. So the manager piece is really the bridge between these two and the things that makes your business keep ticking on and everything like moving smoothly. So I did want to talk briefly because we had a really great post in the Facebook group for this event, and it really touched on some of the core fears that the doer has. And I think they're relevant to what we're talking about today and also what we're talking about tomorrow. So they were sharing that when they have been in that doer reactive mode, they realize that hiring and delegating and getting help could make their life less stressful. But there's also this fear that if they hire an assistant or they hire a team member, they will then have to manage the person and give them the tasks and figure out how to organize the tasks and train them. And they'll actually end up doing everything they're already doing and then having to manage another human as well. And they've got to train them and they've got to cover their wages. And there's just a lot of fear in this idea of hiring and delegating. And if it works, if it doesn't work out, then they're back to square one and they haven't, they believe that they wouldn't have moved forwards at all. And if it does work out, then they need to bring in money, more money than they ever needed to cover this extra person's wage. And if that person leaves, they need to retrain someone else. And, it's all just really daunting. So I just wanted to bring those ideas up. I wanted to really normalize those fears because this is so common. And the flip side of that, which I've also seen a lot of people do, is hire and really give everything to the person they've hired. And when that person does leave, it feels like the absolute end of the world. And I've actually seen that in my own life. When I've been working in other people's businesses, whether that's as a contractor, a consultant, a freelancer, or even just in my career. I've mentioned I'm great at systems, I get involved, but what that often meant is that a lot of things relied on me to the point where I wasn't sure how people, if the business would run in the same way without me. So like both sides of these are really true, and really normal. And what I want to really share here and why it's relevant to today is this manager mindset. So it's very overwhelming, especially if you feel like you're not naturally organized or you don't have systems in place, to think about delegating and to think about hiring someone. And so like when we have that extra stress of, oh, I've got to delegate and organize, and before someone comes in, I have to organize everything, that begins to feel like this absolutely impossible task. So what I want to talk about, and what we're going to be talking about both today and tomorrow, is organizing your time. And we talked about yesterday, organizing your time to ensure you are spending time in this managerial mindset where you're creating systems and structures, because then you're like working on things over time. It's not that you're like, right, I absolutely need help now. Like I cannot get by without delegating and without having to hire, which is the point people who are inclined towards not bringing that help in. So maybe they're inclined towards hyper independence, or there's fear and overwhelm of bringing someone in. So they leave it to the absolute last minute to hire help. And then they feel like they need to organize the complete back end of their business and put in structures that they've not even thought about before. And it feels like at a time when they actually need help and support, it just feels like way more work. And then this snowballs. So the reason I'm sharing around that is just because it's super common, number one. But what I'm going to be really encouraging, and what we're going to be talking about today, is, you know, even if it's like 2 or 3 hours a week and you just focus on one process each week, putting a system in place, putting a template in place, putting ideas in place to have that run as you want it to run, it will just feel so much easier when you hire, when you expand, and when you scale. And this is also how I really encourage people to hire as well. Like even if you just get really clear on one process within your business and you're like, this system works, I have written out a system, I have templates in place, I can now run through this process easily and quickly using exactly what's on in this process, what's on my to-do list, what's on my SOP. I can run through it and there's nothing outside of the SOP that I need. So like just outsource that one thing, right? Even if you just have someone coming in for 2 hours a week, that's 2 hours you get back. You're training, but you're training slowly. You're making sure that they understand it. And then as you're working, you spend those 2 hours on a new process and then you pass that on. You and this person grow together. And the other beautiful thing about that is this person who is in your business, it doesn't actually rely on them because your systems work. So you can plug and play anyone into those systems. You're not asking them to come in and save you and create a new system. You're asking them to come in and run through a system that's already in place that really anyone should be able to follow. So that's like some of the core stuff that we're talking about today. So I've been throwing around the term SOP in what I've just been saying. And I know I explained it briefly yesterday, but I just want to talk about it again. So an SOP is a standard operating procedure. So it's literally just a set of written instructions that describes a step-by-step process that must be taken to properly perform a routine activity. They should be followed in the exact same way every time to guarantee consistency. And what that means is, you know, if my social media manager is off on holiday, I can ask, let's let someone in. Hi, welcome. Okay, yeah, so if my social media manager is off, for example, Let me just switch something. I'm here in my Zoom. Perfect. Yeah, so we're just talking briefly, we've just recapped on the different roles, and what we're really talking about today is being in that management energy, because that's the piece that a lot of people fall off, and it's also kind of my superpower as well. So as I was saying, like an SOP is a standard operating procedure, a set of written instructions that are followed in exactly the same way. And what that means is if my social media manager is on holiday, there are systems and to-do lists and checklists in place that means that my VA can pick it up, or I can pick it up if needs be, or really I could even just bring in someone for a month to do it if they were taking a serious amount of time off, you know, like this is the point. The SOP should be so simple, so easy to follow that anyone could do it. And that's why, you know, creating these processes in the way that you want to work is super important. That's SOPs. The other thing I've written down here is system. Now I know everyone knows what a system is, but I just wanted to explain kind of, well, I think it's worth putting the definition in because it's not something we always think about. And I also want to explain how I'm going to use it. So when I say system, I may be talking about software like tech solutions, automations, but I may also just be talking about a set of principles according to which something is done. So a system can again just be a checklist of things. It's an organized framework or method. And I really encourage you to spend time creating your own based on the way that you work. And that's really the key here, not to bring in people to give you their systems, but to create systems based on how you work. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, main question, what systems do you need? Okay. Yeah, what systems do you need? So, like if you're running a service-based business in the online space or even in the offline space, there are core actions that you need to be taking regularly. And if you're doing it regularly, that means you should have a system around it. Now, again, you don't need to put these systems in place all at once. This should be a weekly activity where you're building on your systems all the time so that it feels good, but it doesn't feel overwhelming. So once you have a system, you can decide what needs your actual input versus what can be automated, what can be delegated. So I love systems. You might have learned this already about me, like I love them. I think they're just the root of all the things that we need to be doing. But I wanted to invite everyone to just take a couple of minutes to think about what the core actions are in your business. So just like give you a couple of minutes and just think about what core actions do you do? Like what core things make your business run? And if you're joining on the replay or Facebook, you could just pop them there, or you can pop them in the chat. But I just think it's important to start thinking about what these core actions are. You can pause me if you need more time and you're not joining live, but I'm going to move on and just share what I think of as the core business activities, and you can see if what you were thinking lines up with these. So these are the core business activities that almost every business needs to run through. They need to have lead generation. They need to have sales. They need to have an onboarding process. They need to have posting online. I'm just seeing what we got in the comments. Posting online, taking payments, delivering the service, accounting. Yeah, exactly. Right. So lead generation, sales, onboarding, customer service, financial payments, accounting, and then project and team management. So these to me are really the core areas that if you just focused on, you would have a running business. So what I'm going to talk about next is the buying cycle. So this is just, I'm sure a lot of you will know this already, but I think it's worth revisiting, because once we look at this, we can start to see how many of these core business activities live in this buying cycle phases. So the top of the pyramid, the first phase of the buying cycle is the attraction phase. So this is the phase where we're building relationships with potential buyers. We're trying to reach people that are interested in your solution or your product or your offer. It's where people are getting to know you, your brand, your services, and it's all about creating awareness of what you do, what problem you solve. What problem you solve. That's the attraction phase. And from a core business activities standpoint, this is your lead generation area as well. Now, the next one is the nurture phase. So this is once you've attracted the attention of the right people through your content or however else you are doing lead generation. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about lead generation in general, because I'll talk about it when we get there. But this is where you start to nurture those relationships with people. This is where you're building that like, know, and trust factor. This is where people start to be like, oh, this person does that thing. Like they start to think about you when they're talking about something. So, if someone's like posts online and says, I'm looking for someone who's really good at systems and helping me get organized, I would hope someone would think of me for that kind of thing. Because I talk about it a lot. So it's that getting to know you stage. Next phase is the convert phase. So this is where they go from a potential customer to a customer or client. This is where they buy from you. This is where they really understand what you do and understand that they want it as well, right? Like it aligns with their desires. They're like, this is something that I either want or need in my life, and I'm willing to trade money to have it, and trade time and trade energy. And then the final phase in the buying cycle is that serving. So this is serving your current clients. This is actually showing up for your calls, making sure that you're in integrity in what you're offering, and that you can hold people in what you have said you can hold them in, and you can provide what you've said you provide. It's also customer service. It's also like them feeling clear in your container. So there's like so many different pieces to this, and people don't always talk about the serve part. They talk about the attracting, the converting, but serving is definitely part of the buying cycle, because people who've already bought from you are also your best leads. Like if they bought from you once, there is, I can't remember the actual figure, but the percentage chance of them buying from you again is so much higher. And I mean, that's not the only reason we should look after our clients, but it's just an important thing to note, right? They've already gone through all of that. They have experienced what it's like to work with you. And if they have a great time doing it, there's just no reason why they wouldn't buy again. So buying cycle phases, we can see how this relates to the lead generation. It relates to sales. It relates to onboarding. It relates to customer service. And I believe it relates to project and team management as well. Because you need, if you have customer service people in your company, if you have specific projects that you're doing for people, you need to be delivering them in the best way possible. So I'm going to run through some key questions of some of these key areas. And this is just to start getting you thinking about how you may set up systems for some of these pieces. So the first one is lead generation. Now, I wanted to talk about lead generation in particular because I think often in the online space, we're kind of sold the idea that lead generation is just posting content. And that's like, you need to show up on social media and that's how you generate leads. And that's one of the ways you generate leads, but there are a huge range of ways to generate leads. And so this is that reminder that like you need to think about how you like to work, who you are, where your people are, and where you want to show up. And that doesn't necessarily need to be social media. So one of these questions is, do you understand your lead generation process? And is it what you want? So, if you are a writer, but you don't like social media, you can focus really heavily on PR or on, well, it is PR, but getting your words and getting your articles and content to the kind of publications and places that your people are getting to. Another way is to be featured on TV or to be featured on podcasts. There's just a lot. There's a lot of lead generation options, and I think we do ourselves a disservice if we forget that there are other ones out there. And social media is like a hugely valid one as well. And the barrier to entry feels easier, which is why a lot of people start there. But it's not actually that difficult to also get featured in places and to become known for something, to work on your thought leadership, all those kind of things. So do you understand what your lead generation process is? Do you know what options you have available to you? And how can you create a process around it? So this might be a content process. Are you spending time, creating a content bank, organizing your posts? Are you spending time actually looking at data, like what's actually performing well for you, and how can you double down on that content that people are really finding a value in? Is there a process where you can choose to show up in one place, the place you feel most comfortable? So if you're someone who likes talking on camera, but hates writing posts every single day, can you show up once a week, once a month somewhere, and then have people take that content and put it in lots of different places? I think I've mentioned, like, I run a marketing agency alongside my coaching practice. And one of the things we do for people is we invite them to choose one place to show up. So we have like a client who just does a weekly podcast. From that weekly podcast, we can usually get 2 to 3 weeks of social media posts. We also create a blog, sometimes up to 3 blogs based on what they've shared in that one podcast episode. And then all those blogs, they go into Pinterest. We may take little clips and put them on a nice background and make them into little YouTube shorts. Like, there's huge ways that you can expand and get your content out there without you having to show up and be somewhere all of the time. So this is why spending time both visioning on how you want to show up and like how it looks in the future, and then putting in those processes in the meantime to support you, gets to be really supportive and save you time. So, and like I mentioned yesterday, you may not have the capacity or the funds to hire a team yet, but can you still put that process in place and be that social media manager for yourself one morning a week, or be that social media manager like 30 minutes a day, and like actively be like, I'm putting this role on and I'm also creating a process around it so someone else can take it over for me eventually, and like building towards that vision, thinking about the roles that you need in your business, fulfilling them now by yourself if you have to, but creating separation and clarity on what it is you're doing and when. Just checking any comments. I so want to do that, but I'm just me. How can I make it easier, more efficient? The thought of all the graphic design, audio, video editing, etc. I just get overwhelmed thinking about it and shut down. Yeah, I mean, that's really common. And that's where I'd invite you to think, what is the easiest way I can do this, right? So, I mean, if you can either answer in here, or you're welcome to come and speak as well. But where do you like to show up? Like, how do you like to show up most? doing a weekly live and enjoying that. Okay, so I think, so like that's you, and like I've seen your weekly lives, they're really good and there's some really interesting topics. So that's great. So I mean, firstly, I always go to, okay, what tools can we use and grab bits to make into posts on Instagram and Facebook? Cool. So are you getting that live transcribed? Okay, so first tool I'm going to share with you is called otter.ai, and I'll put that in the chat as well. So this is literally a free transcribing tool that will transcribe anything for up to 30 minutes. So when you're doing your weekly live, just press play on that, and that will transcribe the whole thing while you're talking. So then you've got reams of content that you can then take from that. So that's like the tech piece. I'd be like, cool, okay, let's transcribe everything that we've got there. And then I would invite you to be like, can you clear a morning and say, this morning I am Claire, like the social media VA, and I'm just going to work through this task. I'm going to use all my tools. So I know you understand embodiment. I know you understand nervous system regulation. Like how can I make this as pleasurable as possible, but also just get through it? And when we kind of, I think I mentioned yesterday, like when we are focused on one set of tasks, we start to do them faster. So I would be creating a template, which is like a picture of you with, a colored background. I would literally have the title of, I would have like some text that's in if you have a brand font, which just has it. And then I would cut clips out and I would stick those in Canva and be like, cool, like here's my different templates, but like have a template that you are just adding those things to. And then from content, just take it from that, what you have transcribed as well. What do you use to cut the clips? What do I use to cut the clips? That's a good question. I think you can literally use Canva. I may have a look at this because I don't tend to do it myself. Like I do outsource this one. But I know there's simple things out there. So yeah, I will post in the Facebook group. But even, as I said, like even if you were just transcribing and taking the words into posts, I think you can just do it in Canva. Like I think you could upload the whole video and then you can just cut sections. I think GarageBand would be another one that you could do. The other thing that I sometimes do is I literally just record myself on Zoom and I press record, and it takes a little bit of focus, and if you're in flow it could be annoying, but you can also just press record and then stop the record in between your different points, and then you have just short videos. So if you're talking for 20 minutes but you've got an outline of what you're talking about, after you talk about every piece, just press record again, and then you've got all these little individual video clips as well. So that's a bit of a hack, which might be helpful. Yeah, sneaky. But yeah, I would really just say, like, clear some time, create a process that feels as good and as simple as possible. And if anything that I'm saying doesn't feel simple, don't do it. Just use the weekly lives and then use the text from the weekly lives and just share it and start there and create a process for that. And then you can work up the other things, but you'll get faster and faster at doing that as well. So yeah, that's always my, regulate, remember that you're like wildly capable and you can figure anything out, and then do it. And then also find, if you need people to help you with systems, like find the right people who explain things in the way that makes sense to you. So like when I work with people, I use a lot of Loom videos to just show people how to do things. And that's actually one of the tools I'm going to talk about as well. So yeah, but yeah, definitely Otter AI, definitely get it transcribed, definitely take pieces of those text, And then if you can, cut it out. And I will put a post in the Facebook group when I remember what tools I usually use for that. Okay, I'm going to move on to sales because I think it's still related as well. So sales processes is the bit that comes after lead generation, right? Like once we've got people coming into our space, talking about our stuff, we then get to ask the question of like, do I have processes around sales? And one of my like main questions for this is, if someone was to buy from you right now, would that actually feel like quite a lot of work? Like, are you like, oh, I've got to do all these different things to get them in? Another thing is, what I'm selling easy to understand? So is there a clear place that someone can read about what I'm selling and how I'm selling it? Am I allowing for the idea that people might just want to buy from me and they need to know where that stuff is? And this again, like, start with making it as simple as possible. Even if it's just a Google document with things listed out that is linked on your Facebook and on your Instagram, but make sure there's like an easy way for people to know what they're getting into. And so it doesn't need to be a flash website, doesn't need to be like, it can literally just be a Google document. I sell a lot just from a PDF, and that's never been a problem. I just make a nice PDF which outlines what I do. I have a really nice template which includes like information about me, information about some of the ways that I work, and then I just plug and play different offers into it. And sure, like, I am now in the process of putting that into a nice website, and it hasn't stopped me from, hitting like 15K sales months, right? So keep it simple and then upgrade your systems as you go along, rather than feeling like you need these systems to all work straight away. So we'll talk about onboarding quickly. So onboarding is another area where I think processes are really important. And some of the things that I really encourage are not only contracts, but also agreements. So agreements are the places where you can set really clear boundaries for your container, and you can set expectations for your container. These are things like, do my clients know how and where to contact me? Like, do they know that I'm not going to respond in this place and this is the place I'm going to respond? Do they know what to do if they're unhappy with anything? Do we have an agreement that we're going to both show up fully in a certain way? So I really think onboarding is an area that a lot of people don't think about enough, and we usually learn from it after we've been burnt. So I'm like really bringing that up now, because hopefully you haven't been burnt yet, but if you have, this is where I think like is a really good place to focus some energy. So this is about having a contract that clearly underlines every possibility. But then I also have an agreement in place that's like, me and you as two humans showing up to collaborate in this container. How does that look as well? Like, how do we expect each other to show up? Are our expectations the same? Because there's one thing having a contract that says, we have 3 calls a month and we do this and that. But how are we showing up as humans? How am I going to hold you? What am I not equipped to deal with? And not just from that legal standpoint, but from that really human standpoint as well. So like, as we're thinking about upgrading different systems and areas, like, this is one of the processes that I think is really worth time, and then gets easier as well, because once we have an agreement in place, we then have a template. Once we have some templates, like template agreement, template contract, we can then set up an automated process using, like, there's different tools, but the most basic one is most people I know do have like an email marketing software. Like, you just create a nurture sequence for it. So you have a welcome to the container email that's already set up, ready to go. You then have a link to your contract, which is wherever that would be. And you just, whenever you're doing any of these processes for the first time, you make sure you're spending time that week actually making a process around it. That's really like the core of everything I'm talking about here. The final one I'm just going to visit quickly here is project management as well. So with project management, again, I think this is an area that people don't actively think about enough until everything gets really overwhelming and they don't, and because they haven't managed the project or managed whatever it is that they're doing. And I think of everything in business as a project. So this launch is a project to me. This 3-day event is a project. The mastermind I'm launching afterwards is a project. Like, these are projects. Projects have defined deadlines, defined scope. And if you're not thinking about things as projects and starting from there, you're forgetting like how it aligns with the big picture. So you're not bringing in that visionary piece. So for project management, my first question, and because these are the places where people get really overwhelmed at the idea of it, but it's like, how do you like to work? So project management can be as simple as a shared Google document that has, 5 different headings with like a line about what that project is, and then like bullet pointed tasks. And then if you have someone else involved in your business, they can make comments on things. It can just be a spreadsheet. Like, for a long time, I just worked on a spreadsheet where we'd have project, the task, who's working on it, and what the deadline is. And that was great, because then I could just go in and look at it and everything was there. I use Trello, so that's my favorite tool. And like later, I don't know if we'll get to it today, but in this presentation, like I actually list out a lot of the tools that I use as well. I might update it before I send it out to put some video editing stuff in. But yeah, I'm like, now I use Trello. And I use Trello because it's really simple. So a lot of my clients get quite overwhelmed with the tech, get quite overwhelmed with the processes. So I keep this so simple, and I use a structure which is literally to do, doing, and done. And so you can use that structure on a spreadsheet. You can use that in a Google document. You can use it on Asana or Basecamp or Trello. You can get as complicated as you want with it. But that's how that's the base of how I organize all my projects. What's to do, what's currently being done, and what is completed. Sometimes I add another section in which is for review. So that would be between the doing piece and the completed piece. But like, anyone can understand that, right? Anyone can look at that and say, these are the things I have to do. These are the things I'm doing, and these are the things that are completed. And then we can go back to things like our urgent and important quadrant and be like, and which of these am I doing this week? Which of these need doing today? Which of these can I leave till next week? That kind of thing. Yeah, and then just see this comment. I love how systematic and organized you are. I feel like I'm great at this for other people. When it's me doing all the things, I get so lost. Yeah, completely. And that's really what I'm trying to encourage today is like, you don't need to do all the things. You need to think about which area, like which of the areas we talked about today would save you the most time, right? Like where, and this is where like yesterday, where we're doing that brain dump, where are you spending your time? Where is that 80% of the time going that's not moving you forward? Like, start with those processes there. And like, when I say process, make it so simple. So like, if you're currently spending like a huge amount of time on content, right? And you feel like, oh, I'm showing up all the time with content. Well, how can we start to build processes that make that feel easier? So I do have another tool for you as well. So there's another tool called like repurpose.io. And this will actually take clips and automatically make them out of what you're creating if you're creating longer form videos. So if you're showing up and you're uploading something to YouTube, it will then cut pieces down and it can put them on TikTok and Instagram for you. So it's just like, I think I literally wrote this on the sales page, but that it does take a bit of time. But this is where we invest a bit of time now to save you so much time later. So like that weekly live, like that is incredible digital real estate that you have. And now we need to figure out like how can we get that in all the other places but not take up all your time while doing that. So that would really be like, if that's taking up 80% of your time, how can we start to upgrade those processes and systems so that everything flows from that and to that? Like, have you thought about taking the audio and just putting it onto a podcast? Like, how can we get you into more places and create systems around it so that it doesn't take up your entire life and all of the business stuff that you also need to do as well? Yeah, cool. Another thing with project management is that big three idea I introduced yesterday. And this, if you feel overwhelmed or like you're getting lost, this is really, I would invite you to think about this big three. So like, what is the big three things that would make you count the next 3 months as a success? And then what would you need to do this month to get closer to making those big three things happen by the end of the next 3 months? And then what would you need to do this week to make the goals for this month feel stronger? What would you need to do today? And that goes back to like the most often it's the not urgent but important tasks, right? So like often it's just getting back into what's doesn't feel urgent but is important for my business's health and growth. And like, I actually work with quite a few like health coaches, and I think about this in terms of the body. Like we all know, I'm sure most of us, especially any women watching this, like have read enough nutritional advice to like keep us in there to like talk about for years. But what actually works is deciding on what are manageable, healthy goals and working on them, right? So like if I decided that I want to get in shape and next week I'm going to join the gym and walk every single day, and then I'm also going to, eat, cut out carbs and like do all these things, that's never going to be sustainable. But if I decided that I want to attempt to walk 10,000 steps every single day, or I want to do 3 hours of dancing a week, and then I build on that and I build on that, they're habits that I'm going to probably stick to. And it's going to actually feel good for me because I'm listening to myself and my body as well. And this really is where it applies to business too. Like, what do I have capacity for? What am I capable of? How can I manage those things every single week and keep building on them? Yeah. Cool. Okay. So kind of related to that, I have just put in this bonus area, which is like these visionary processes, right? So we've been mostly talking about like what manager tasks and actions and processes you need to do. But making time for that visionary stuff is also really important when it comes to that big vision for our business. So some key questions here are like, how can I protect my visionary time? And I mentioned yesterday that like for me, that's making sure it's the first thing I do. That's putting my phone on like do not disturb, black and white, so that when I like look at it in the morning and switch off my alarm, I'm like reminded like, okay, I don't look at this yet. And that's how I protect my morning time. I don't look at emails. I try and work on a notepad so that I don't open my laptop. But actually, I prefer typing. So I often do open my laptop. And that's why at the end of the day, I always close all my tabs. Because if I open my laptop, and these are like simple things, but they make a difference. Because if I open my laptop and I see this half-written presentation and, 14,000 emails unread and all these other things and like all these Facebook notifications, I am not going to do my mindset practice. I'm going to start doing. So like, how can you protect your visionary time? Next is like, do you have a mindset practice that works no matter how much time you have available? So I really try and fit in mindset every single day. But like sometimes I don't have time to sit down and journal for an hour or 20 minutes, or, I just literally even don't feel like I have that 20 minutes. So I put on affirmations while while I'm getting ready. I also have a practice where when I put my kettle or coffee maker on in the morning, that's when I set my intention for the day. And I say 3 things that I'm grateful for. And it's like those little things where we stack habits on stuff that we already do, and then give ourselves credit for it. So we're like, yeah, I do mindset every single day. Like I count writing back posts as doing mindset. Like I make it all count. And then, and then when I have more time, I expand into that as well. Another way I do this is I have like a pleasure menu of like things that take 5 minutes, things that take 10 minutes, things that take 2 minutes. And it can literally be just doing like downward dog and child pose for a bit. Like that's how I break up my day, or hip circles or stretches. But that keeps me focused and remembering like I have a vision and bring it to life, and this is why I create time to support myself as well. So they're nervous system regulation tools, that's embodiment work. I would also encourage like processes and SOPs for stuff like monitoring whether you're feeling burnout, right? Like a lot of us aren't great at recognizing when we're getting like close to those things, but when you stop and know yourself, you recognize the signs. So how can you check in on that every week? How can you manage it if that is how you're feeling? Like, do you need a content detox? That's a question I ask myself a lot. Like, do I need to stop seeing other people's content? And like, I just have a list of questions that I revisit every now and again. And I'm like, cool, I'm just taking like a temperature check of where I am, how I'm feeling. And like, that's my process for tending to myself as well. So we are coming up to time, but I'm just going to share. So I have a lot of actual tools in this presentation, which I'm going to send out. So I've got my favorite project management tools, my favorite communication tools, my favorite time tracker tools, and then additional tools that I use weekly as well. So this will be going out in email. But yeah, I mean, I would like to just finish with saying, like, is there any questions? I'm going to check through the comments on Facebook as well, but is there anything that's coming up from what we've talked about today that anyone wants to spend a couple of minutes on? Lost my Zoom. Where have you gone? Stop share. Okay, perfect. So, I mean, if you do have any questions that are coming up, feel free to post them in the Facebook. I'm going to try and make time for Q&A tomorrow. I might also go live. So if there's anything like specific, I can go live in the Facebook group and talk about it. But yeah, with all these things, I just really encourage the stuff that you already know: nervous system regulation, grounding, infusing it with pleasure, and tackling it like one tiny step at a time, like baby stepping it all the way. I think you're right, and I need to do more of the manager stuff. It just always feels like I'm doing the urgent doer stuff, and taking time to organize the task feels like too much time. Yeah, motivating me to take time up front. Yeah, and that's why we really do need to gatekeep time, right? Like the urgent doer stuff always feels urgent and always will if we don't make the managerial time to like protect and create space for it as well. And that's the tough reality of it. Like if we're always in doer and we're always in urgency, we're never going to be building a business. We're just working like a 24-hour job, right? And this is where those like memes that people share online, where they're like, I didn't want to work for anyone else on a 9 to 5, so now I work 24/7 for myself. that is not how you should be working. That's not how anyone should be working. Yeah, and it's not nervous system healthy to always feel like you're putting out fires as well. So yeah, block out time, even if it's just an hour, block it out in the morning before you even look at anything else, and think about what's taking up the most of my time, and like, how can I be supported in this, even if that's just systems online or something like that. But like, how can I, one of the things that I like, even as simple as I pay $3 a month to a website that is literally just a note-taking website where it encourages me to write 750 words a day. I use that because I'm mindset, the journaling is the first thing I fall off. So like, that feels like accountability to me. I'm a doer as well. Like, I love to see it has a little cross over every day that you actually show up and write the words. And like, that's really satisfying to me. So like, I just really encourage you to spend time to find tools that support you. And the other thing that's really important here that I haven't mentioned yet is no single tool will do everything that you want. Like, no system or solution will do everything you want. And the trick is really to choose one that you like the usability of, and then figure out ways to make it work for whatever your process is. So, I think this is a problem of the manager, is you can spend a lot of time trying to find the absolute best system, the absolute best tool. But I really encourage like easy, simple decisions where you're like, cool, I've Googled, these seem to be the top 3. I'm going to try a trial of each of them. I'm going to use them for the next week and then see which one I like. And then I'm sticking with it. And anything that comes up that is not great or doesn't work for me, like, I'm going to build steps and processes around it. So like, I know a lot of people spend a lot of time on like website builders. They spend a lot of time on email software. And like, they all do the same thing, like, the question is, do you like to use it and how does it feel? I'll add that it was much easier for me when the morning time when I bought an analog alarm and left my phone in the living room overnight. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to bring this back because I end up scrolling for hours and wasting so much time in the morning answering messages and engaging in conversations that are not actually moving stuff forward. Yeah, like, there's your hour of management time, right? Like, if you don't look at your phone until after you've done your management time and you've figured out what task do I want to achieve today and what system do I want to tweak and improve upon this week, and if you did that for an hour every morning, you would actually feel like you had way more time, because it's not those like dead hours as well. So how can I make it simple, but how can I create more time for myself always has to be the question. Okay, cool. Great. Oh, it was so nice to have you live. Like I said, any comments in the Facebook group, show up, ask anything. Yeah, and we've got a great final day planned. So I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much.